Hi. My name is Alicia Andrade. This is my story. It's not an easy one to tell. It's about choices, mistakes, and the kind of secrets that can tear a family apart. It all started on a quiet Friday night. The kind of night that feels ordinary until it isn't. Until something happens that changes everything. I was a single mother, raising 2 kids on my own. My daughter, Elena, was 16, smart, independent, but distant. My son, Jonathan, was 12. He was growing up fast, taller than most boys his age, and starting to ask questions about life that I wasn't ready to answer. That night, I thought I was doing what I always did. Tucking Jonathan into bed, like I had since he was little. But what happened after, it wasn't something I could have prepared for. This is a story about boundaries crossed, trust broken, and the consequences that followed. It's about how one moment can change everything. If you've ever made a mistake you couldn't take back, or felt the weight of a secret too heavy to carry, maybe you'll understand. Maybe you'll see a piece of yourself in this story. But I warn you, it's not an easy story to hear. It's raw, it's real, and it's one I've carried for a long time. So, let me take you back to that night. The night everything changed. This is my story. And I need to tell it. Let me tell you about us. About who we were before that night. My son, Jonathan, was 12 years old. But he wasn't like most 12-year-olds. He was tall for his age, almost as tall as me. He had this quiet confidence, but also this innocence that made my heart ache. He was curious about everything, always asking questions, always trying to figure out how the world worked. But there was something else. Something I didn't know how to handle. He was changing. Not just physically, but emotionally too. He'd get these moods, these moments where he'd shut himself in his room and not talk to anyone. I didn't know how to reach him. I didn't know if I even should. Then there was Elena. My daughter. She was 16, and she was everything I wasn't at that age. Strong, independent, unafraid to speak her mind. But she was also distant. She spent most of her time in her room, texting her friends or listening to music. She and Jonathan fought constantly, over the TV, over the couch, over who got the last slice of pizza. And then there was me. Alicia. A single mother in her late 30s, trying to hold it all together. My divorce had left me drained, emotionally and financially. I worked long hours, came home exhausted, and tried to be there for my kids. But it never felt like enough. I loved them. More than anything. But love doesn't always fix things. Sometimes, it's not enough to keep the cracks from showing. That Friday night, I thought it was just another evening. Dinner, TV, bedtime. But looking back, I can see the signs. The tension in the air. The way Jonathan and Elena bickered more than usual. The way I felt so alone, even with my kids right there in the same room. I didn't know it then, but we were all on the edge of something. Something that would change us forever. That night started like any other. But it didn't end that way. Act 1, Establishing the Family Dynamics, 3 to 10 o'clock, Scene 1, a tense family dinner show. The family eating dinner together. Alicia is distracted, scrolling through her phone, while Elena and Jonathan bicker over trivial things. Highlight the lack of communication and emotional distance between Alicia and her children. Scene 2, Sibling rivalry. Later that night, Jonathan and Elena fight over the sectional couch while watching TV. Their playful argument escalates into a physical tussle, which ends with Jonathan accidentally touching Elena inappropriately. Both are shocked, but don't address it. Elena storms off to her room, and Jonathan is left confused and aroused. Scene 3, Alicia's loneliness. Alicia tucks Jonathan into bed, a ritual she's kept since he was a child. She seems distant and preoccupied, hinting at her own struggles with loneliness and unmet emotional needs. That night, after dinner, I sent the kids to bed. Elena went to her room without a word, like she always did. Jonathan lingered for a bit, half watching TV, half dozing on the couch. I was tired. So tired. But I still went through the motions. I walked into Jonathan's room to turn off his light, like I'd done 1,000 times before. He was already in bed, the sheets pulled up to his chin. I smiled faintly, thinking how much he still looked like my little boy, even though he was growing up so fast. I reached for the lamp, my fingers brushing the switch. But something felt off. I can't explain it. A mother just knows. I turned back to him. "Jonathan?" I said softly. He didn't answer. He was pretending to be asleep, but I could see the tension in his body. The way he was holding himself so still, like he was afraid to move. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something deeper, something I didn't want to admit to myself. But I reached out and pulled back the sheets. And then I saw it. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Jonathan was, well, he wasn't a little boy anymore. He opened his eyes then, wide with panic. "Mom, but he didn't finish. He couldn't." He was mortified, his face turning bright red. He grabbed the sheets and yanked them back up, hiding himself from me. I didn't know what to say. What to do. My heart was pounding, my thoughts a jumbled mess. Shock. Curiosity. Guilt. They all crashed over me at once. I took a step back, my hand trembling as I reached for the lamp again. "It's okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just go to sleep." I turned off the light and left the room, closing the door behind me. But I couldn't leave. I stood there in the hallway, my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. What had just happened? What had I done? I didn't have answers. All I knew was that something had shifted. Something had changed between us, and I didn't know how to fix it. But the truth is, I didn't want to fix it. Not then. Not in that moment. And that's where it all began. That night, I made a choice. A choice that would change everything. I didn't go back to my room that night. I couldn't. My mind was spinning, my heart racing. I felt. I don't even know how to describe it. Confused. Curious. Lonely. I stood in the hallway for what felt like forever, staring at Jonathan's door. Part of me knew I should walk away. That I should go to bed, forget what had happened, and pretend it was just a strange moment. But I didn't. I opened the door and stepped back inside. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the nightlight. Jonathan was still lying there, his back to me, the sheets pulled tight around him. "Jonathan," I whispered. He didn't answer at first. But then, slowly, he turned to look at me. His eyes were wide, scared. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said, his voice shaking. I sat down on the edge of his bed. My hand reached out, almost on its own, and brushed his hair back from his forehead. "It's okay," I said softly. "You don't have to be sorry." But it wasn't okay. I knew that. Deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. A line that should never be crossed. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the loneliness. The years of feeling like I wasn't enough. Like I didn't matter. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the world who could make things right. Whatever it was stronger than me. I leaned down and hugged him. At first, it was just a mother comforting her son. But then, it changed. I felt him tense under my touch. I felt the way his breath hitched, the way his heart raced. And I didn't stop. I told myself I was comforting him. That I was helping him understand what he was feeling. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was, I was lost. I was selfish. I was wrong. When I finally pulled away, I couldn't look him in the eye. I just whispered, "This is our secret, okay? No one can ever know." He nodded, his face pale, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. I left the room then, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of what I'd done. But there was no making sense of it. There was no excuse. No justification. I had crossed a line. And there was no going back. That night, I made a choice. A choice that would haunt me for the rest of my life. After that night, nothing felt the same. Not for me. Not for Jonathan. I went back to his room the next morning, my stomach in knots. I didn't know what to say. How to explain what had happened. How to make it right. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. He looked up when I walked in, his eyes filled with questions I couldn't answer. "Jonathan," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "What happened last night, it has to stay between us. No one can ever know. Not Elena. Not anyone." He nodded slowly, but he didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me, like he was waiting for me to tell him it was all a dream. That it hadn't really happened. But I couldn't do that. I knelt down in front of him, taking his hands in mine. "I love you," I said, my voice breaking. "You know that, right? No matter what, I love you." He nodded again, but his eyes were still filled with confusion. "I love you too, Mom," he whispered. It broke my heart to hear him say that. Because I didn't deserve it. Not after what I'd done. "This is our secret," I said, squeezing his hands. "Our forever secret. You can't tell anyone. Not ever. Do you understand?" He nodded one more time, his face pale, his hands trembling in mine. I wanted to say more. To explain. To apologize. But I didn't. I just stood up, kissed him on the forehead, and left the room. I told myself it was for the best. That keeping it a secret would protect him. Protect us. But the truth was, I was protecting myself. I was scared. Scared of what would happen if anyone found out. Scared of losing him. Losing Elena. Losing everything. But keeping the secret didn't make it go away. It didn't make it any less real. It just made it heavier. And as the days went on, I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. On Jonathan. On our family. We were all carrying it. Even if we didn't know it yet. That secret changed everything. And it was only the beginning. After that night, nothing felt the same. Not for me. Not for Jonathan. I went back to his room the next morning, my stomach in knots. I didn't know what to say. How to explain what had happened. How to make it right. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. He looked up when I walked in, his eyes filled with questions I couldn't answer. "Jonathan," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "What happened last night, it has to stay between us. No one can ever know. Not Elena. Not anyone." He nodded slowly, but he didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me, like he was waiting for me to tell him it was all a dream. That it hadn't really happened. But I couldn't do that. I knelt down in front of him, taking his hands in mine. "I love you," I said, my voice breaking. "You know that, right? No matter what, I love you." He nodded again, but his eyes were still filled with confusion. "I love you too, Mom," he whispered. It broke my heart to hear him say that. Because I didn't deserve it. Not after what I'd done. "This is our secret," I said, squeezing his hands. "Our forever secret. You can't tell anyone. Not ever. Do you understand?" He nodded one more time, his face pale, his hands trembling in mine. I wanted to say more. To explain. To apologize. But I didn't. I just stood up, kissed him on the forehead, and left the room. I told myself it was for the best. That keeping it a secret would protect him. Protect us. But the truth was, I was protecting myself. I was scared. Scared of what would happen if anyone found out. Scared of losing him. Losing Elena. Losing everything. But keeping the secret didn't make it go away. It didn't make it any less real. It just made it heavier. And as the days went on, I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. On Jonathan. On our family. We were all carrying it. Even if we didn't know it yet. That secret changed everything. And it was only the beginning. After that night, I tried to pretend everything was normal. But it wasn't. It couldn't be. I found myself watching Jonathan more closely. Noticing things I hadn't before. The way he carried himself. The way he smiled. The way he looked at me sometimes, like he was waiting for me to explain what had happened. But I didn't explain. I couldn't. Instead, I became erratic. One moment, I'd be overly affectionate with him, hugging him too tightly, brushing his hair back, telling him how much I loved him. The next, I'd pull away, avoiding his eyes, keeping my distance. It wasn't fair to him. I knew that. But I didn't know how to stop. Elena noticed. Of course she did. She was always so observant, so sharp. She'd catch me staring at Jonathan, or see me flinch when he walked into the room. "What's going on with you two?" she asked one day, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. "Nothing," I said quickly, too quickly. "Why would you think something's going on?" She didn't answer. She just gave me this look, like she didn't believe me. And why should she? I wasn't acting like myself. I started drinking more. Just a glass of wine here and there at first, but soon it became a habit. Something to numb the guilt, the fear, the shame. I'd stay up late, sitting in the dark, staring at the TV without really watching it. My mind would race, replaying that night over and over again. Wondering what I could have done differently. Wondering if I could ever make it right. But I didn't know how. And the more I tried to pretend everything was okay, the worse it got. For all of us. Elena wasn't stupid. She could see something was wrong. And she wasn't the type to let things go. She started watching me. Watching Jonathan. She'd catch us in the hallway, or at the dinner table, and her eyes would dart between us, like she was trying to piece together a puzzle. One night, she cornered Jonathan in his room. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I heard enough. "What's going on with you and Mom?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Nothing," Jonathan said, his voice trembling. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," she snapped. "I'm not blind. Something's going on, and I want to know what it is." "There's nothing," he shouted, his voice breaking. "Just leave me alone." I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to go in there. To stop them. To explain. But I couldn't. Instead, I just listened as Elena stormed out of his room, slamming the door behind her. She didn't talk to me about it. Not directly. But I could feel the tension growing between us. The way she'd glare at me across the dinner table. The way she'd avoid my touch when I tried to hug her. She was pulling away. And I didn't know how to stop her. Jonathan was pulling away too. He spent more time in his room, avoiding me, avoiding Elena. He stopped asking questions. Stopped smiling. And I just kept spiraling. I didn't know how to fix it. How to make it right. All I knew was that the secret was tearing us apart. And it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. That's when things started to unravel. And there was no stopping it. It was a Saturday morning. The house was quiet, too quiet. I was in the kitchen, trying to focus on making breakfast, but my hands were shaking. Jonathan walked in, his face pale, his eyes avoiding mine. "Mom," he said softly, "we need to talk." My heart dropped. I knew what was coming. I could see it in his face. The guilt. The fear. The confusion. Not now, I said quickly, my voice barely above a whisper. Later, okay? But he didn't listen. He stepped closer, his voice trembling. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending like nothing happened. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say anything, I heard a noise behind me. Elena was standing in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. She'd heard everything. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice shaking. What happened? Jonathan froze, his eyes darting between me and Elena. I could see the panic in his face, the fear of what was about to happen. Elena, I began, my voice trembling, it's not what you think, don't lie to me, she shouted, cutting me off. I heard you. What's going on? What did you do? I didn't know what to say. How to explain. How to make her understand. But the truth was, there was no explanation. No justification. I broke down. Right there in the kitchen, I collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, I whispered, over and over again. I'm so sorry. Elena just stood there, staring at me, her face a mix of anger, disgust, and disbelief. You're sick, she said finally, her voice cold. You're both sick. And then she turned and walked out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I wanted to go after her. To beg for her forgiveness. But I couldn't move. I just sat there, crying, while Jonathan stood frozen in the corner, his face pale, his hands trembling. That was the moment I knew. The moment I realized there was no going back. After that day, nothing was the same. Elena refused to speak to me. She packed her bags and moved in with her aunt, refusing to even look at me as she walked out the door. Jonathan, he was sent to therapy. I thought it would help him. Help us. But it didn't. Not really. He stopped talking to me altogether. He'd come home from school, go straight to his room, and shut the door. No more questions. No more smiles. Just silence. And me? I was left alone. Alone in a house that felt too big, too empty. Alone with my guilt, my shame.